everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor. Today we're going to talk about the trauma iceberg. And that really is the more visible ways that we can see trauma in our lives, and other people around us can probably see, if we are a trauma survivor, some of the symptoms that we're suffering with, as well as the more invisible or hidden ways that trauma can masquerade maybe as other things that we're not actually aware of in terms of it being caused by trauma. So this will help individuals understand how trauma has impacted them. And then I will also start to introduce IFS concepts. So that's internal family systems therapy. It's an amazing way of healing trauma survivors, and it really works with our wounded parts and helping us to improve self-leadership. So I will talk more about that in this video as well. And I will begin to help you guys understand some of your wounded parts, and also the way that they kind of run the show, so to speak, without you being aware of it, and ways of helping them to kind of calm down and stop causing so much distress. And so I'll be introducing in future videos. I'm going to do a whole entire series on IFS parts and how to heal them. So look forward to that as well in my future videos. And as always, please like and subscribe. If you watch the video all the way to the end, it helps the YouTube algorithm push my videos out more and for my channel to grow. And I so appreciate your support. And if you make it all the way to the end, I'll even add another video in of my adorable potbelly pig Tilly. All right, guys, let's get right into it. So the trauma iceberg is a representative of what trauma looks like on the surface of a person, and then what is represented as the bigger part underneath the surface. So for example, a typical trauma client will come in, for example, with panic attacks and anxiety, maybe some explosive anger or some substance use, and that's what we're seeing on the surface. But what's underneath is actually a lot deeper and a lot more profound, and underlies the majority of their suffering, and those are those trauma wounds, those childhood adverse experiences that are causing things like shame and low self-worth. They might be just struggling with nightmares, hypervigilance, intrusive thoughts. And so the following slides will talk about some of these things in more detail as well, so you get an idea of what trauma can look like in individuals. So hypervigilance is something you might see on the bottom part of the iceberg. So this is where an individual never feels safe. They're always on guard. Maybe they have a very high startle reflex. And so, the small noises in their environment might cause them to get scared and have a pretty strong startle reflex. And essentially the person just has a hard time feeling safe and being able to relax no matter where they're at. So avoidance is another bottom of the iceberg symptom. This really stems from that avoidant attachment style from our childhoods. If our parents or caregivers did not meet our emotional needs, child emotional neglect is frequently a cause of this. Children can grow up realizing that they will not get their emotional needs for connection and safety met. And so they learned fundamentally that people are not to be trusted. And in fact, a lot of them are pretty overly self-reliant or overly independent, for example, and that really stems from the childhood wound of emotional neglect. Another bottom of the iceberg symptom is disassociation or numbing. So disassociation is really where your mind is not in the present moment and it's elsewhere, and it can lead people to feel a sense of numbing or not feeling real, or things like depersonalization and derealization, where they almost feel like they are an outside observer in their own bodies or their own thoughts or feelings. And this again is a freeze response from our trauma exposure. So control freaks are a top of the iceberg symptom. This is something that other people can visibly see in our behavior or our loved ones' behaviors. And really, nobody enjoys a giant Karen, right? Where everything has to be just so, and they get super mad or angry anytime, something doesn't go their way. And it's just really not a fun thing to experience, either within ourselves or in people we love. Another bottom of the iceberg symptom is self-hatred or feeling unworthy. So this is by far one of the most common wounds I see, and this also stems from childhood abuse and neglect. and where parents really failed to mirror their child appropriately and to communicate the fact that their child is unconditionally loved. So this is one of those internal exiles that we work on with internal family systems therapy. So this is another top of the iceberg one. This one's pretty self-explanatory. High degrees of rage and anger is definitely a sign that a major protector is at work here, trying to protect those exiles and those wounded parts from getting triggered. Anger is a main protector in our system and really is helping to defend against more vulnerable, wounded emotions and parts. So this one is a more hidden impact from chronic trauma. Chronic trauma causes high degrees of stress hormones in our bodies and also can lead to negative health outcomes. This has been proven from the adverse childhood experience research. And high degrees of cortisol and stress hormones are responsible for negative health outcomes and even early death. Sleep issues and insomnia and nightmares are also common in trauma survivors. This is a more hidden symptom, again, of chronic trauma. And nightmares frequently are experienced by those with complex PTSD as well as PTSD. And again, it's our brain's way of attempting to process very painful emotions and experiences while we are at sleep. And so people have trouble with this and also with falling asleep commonly. So physical symptoms are also commonly seen in trauma survivors, things like IBS or other digestive problems, headaches, migraines, body pain. This is, again, due to those high degree of stress hormones and cortisol levels running through our bodies as trauma survivors, which can break the body down over time and cause a wide degree of physical symptoms in addition to our emotional symptoms. So anxiety symptoms are another common symptom seen in trauma survivors. Again, the body is really facing a high degree of chronic stress, which puts it in a state of fight or flight a lot of the time. And anxiety symptoms are really a sign of that fight response, where the body is preparing to either run away or fight back against a threat. And so things like chest tightness and racing thoughts, trembling, heart racing, sweaty palms, etc., that's all going to be a sign that your fight or flight system is engaged. So emotional or physical flashbacks are, again, another bottom of the iceberg symptom. And this is where either events will happen that will cause us to have a trauma reminder from the past that will flood right over us, either with an emotional memory related to past events, or even sometimes we have physical body sensations related to past trauma as well. So flashbacks can not only just be memories, but they can also include emotional and physical symptoms as well. Another really sad and distressing symptom is depression and self-harm and suicidality. So suicidality would obviously be more of a surface symptom because people are going to see that, or self-harm can be more of a surface symptom. Depression is more of a hidden symptom because many of us, can hide our depression really well from others. But this really is, again, another very common protector that I see in trauma victims. Depression is like an old friend, right? Where if we felt helpless to overcome a particular situation, at least depression helped us escape by numbing and not feeling anything. And suicidality also is another very common protector that I work on with internal family systems therapy with my clients. Suicide really is the body and brain's last ditch attempt to make the pain stop. So that's a firefighter part that we would call it in IFS. All right, so let's talk about IFS, which stands for Internal Family Systems Therapy. Let's get you familiar with some of the terms from this beautiful therapy modality. Exiles, again, you probably heard me mention those. Those are the original wounds from childhood. So things like our sense of unworthiness, or feeling like we're too much or not enough, or being rejected as a child, being abandoned, loneliness. So as you can see, those really are the original painful hotspots that we get from childhood trauma. And then the two different types of protectors here. So protectors in general are trying to protect those wounded parts from getting activated and from feeling significant distress, because clearly those wounds are very distressing to feel. So managers are the more helpful parts. A lot of people actually kind of like their managers because they help you kind of manage everyday life. And firefighters are more of the extreme protectors. Those are the ones that if it's a level 4 alarm fire, so to speak, we're going to have all hands on deck to make the pain stop. So firefighters react swiftly and in very extreme ways to make the pain stop. And managers are more kind of running the day-to-day tasks, kind of like an office manager, for example. So as you can see there, some of the managers are people-pleasing parts, parts that struggle with perfectionism, self-sabotaging parts, anxiety parts, procrastination, overachieving parts, caretaking parts, workaholic parts. And then firefighters, again, those are the anger, rage, any of the addictions, for example, suicide, self-harm, substance use. These are the ones that cause a lot more harm to us. And even disassociation is a firefighter part 2 that helps us to just not feel anything. So the goal here in IFS is to get to know our parts and to get to know the jobs or roles that they do in our system, and also to begin to befriend them with compassion and gentleness so that we can begin to learn the entire system and understand ourselves deeply and to begin to love ourselves deeply. So the goals of IFS is always reducing wounded parts and improving self-leadership. And we'll talk about that right now. So self-leadership really is all about the unwounded, authentic part of us that is always present. So IFS teaches that everyone has been born with this innate self-energy. And what self-energy has are the 8 C's. And so the 8 C's, as you see here, are things like compassion and calm and clarity, or being able to see things, without that rigid black and white polarized thinking, courage and confidence, connection, curiosity, and creativity. And I would even add things like playfulness and joy and exploration. Think about your inner child, if at all, if you can remember parts of your childhood that were full of playfulness and curiosity and exploration and laughter, that would be your unwounded, authentic self. Now, many of us as trauma survivors did not have these experiences, and so it's very hard actually for a client to get in touch with who they authentically really are. So that is the goal of IFS, is to increase self-leadership, or their authentic self that's unwounded, and to decrease the activity of the wounded parts and how much distress that they cause on a regular basis. So the way I like to think about self-leadership is that I protect myself now. So there's an adult part of me that is always loving and compassionate and kind and gentle. And that is the part of me that mentors and protects and teaches and is with and is compassionate and present with my child parts. So all of those adorable child parts now are protected by this adult, wise, unconditionally loving part of me that I now have. I hope you found this video helpful. Again, please don't forget to like and subscribe and watch the videos all the way through. It really helps that YouTube algorithm, and I so appreciate all of your support, and I look forward to teaching more about IFS and the individual parts here very shortly, so stay tuned. And hey, here's your video of Tilly right now.